Hello there. Good evening for us. I'm Reverend Judith Churchman, and this is my co-pastor, Reverend Dr. Bob
Right.
Lucken.
And I'm in and out of light here.
And we're so happy to introduce our two practitioners who are leading us this evening in our prayer summit. This is a new offering that we're doing, speaking on the importance of affirmative prayer and illustrating it and using it on various topics. Our two practitioners that are leading us this evening are Joe Seiler, practitioner of religious science.
Emeritus?
No, she's not emeritus now. And Pamela Gray, our practitioner. And so they will be leading us this evening, and we are just going to sit silently and enjoy.
Okay. Thank you so much for that introduction, Reverend Judith. And it's so nice to be here. And I wanted to thank everybody who's here on Zoom. And I'd also like to thank whoever's going to be watching on YouTube. And my name is Joe Seiler. And together with Dr. Pamela Gray, we're going to be facilitating this evening's summit. We're both licensed religious science practitioners, and we're both affiliated with the Center for Spiritual Living here in Palm Beaches. And I'd like to invite you right now to join me as we recognize our oneness, and we set the tone for this evening. I want to invite you to relax, close your eyes, please, and focus your awareness on spirit or God, or whatever you call that power for good. Power is here right now and flowing through each and every one who is on this Zoom and who is perhaps listening through YouTube in the future. Open your heart to the acceptance of your highest good as together we explore the power of affirmative prayer. It's available to all. And we are so grateful for this time, and we accept our good now. And so it is.
So it is.
And now I'd like to turn the meeting over to my colleague and friend, Dr. Pamela Gray.
Well, thank you, Joe. I certainly have, it's been a real pleasure to work alongside you in planning and thinking through how we can be of greatest service tonight. And in particular, talk about one of the most rewarding experiences in the religious science foundation of New Thought. And that is the relationship each person has to prayer. Prayer really is a form of communication. It's a form of communication that invites the presence of God to be with us, wherever we might be. And tonight, both Joe and I and the whole ministry for Palm Beaches is here to witness that present action of God through each one of us, and to invite that presence into the homes and lives of each person within the reach of our voices. Now, today happens to be a particularly special or unique day. It's September 11th. And September 11th is many activities are going on to recognize the importance of this day in our history and in the lives of many people. But for tonight, it's going to represent freedom. It's going to represent our individual freedom and our freedom to think freely, to work towards our aspirational interests, to reach goals, to collaborate with each other, and to be of service as we are tonight. Now, for me, that freedom represents not being in bondage. Not being in bondage to conventional wisdom, not being in bondage to the thoughts of society, but to follow our unique and individual personalities through this journey we call life. And we've been given a remarkable freedom. And that freedom is the relationship that each of us have, unique, as our individual portion of soul. Now, soul really is a way for us to have access to the fruits of thought and to take that thought and demonstrate it into more perfect results. And to think that our individual thoughts can take us on remarkable journeys to witness and experience so much in life that's unique to our personalities and our individual interests. That freedom to use our creative gifts and talents and apply them in ways that not only better ourselves, but better the world around us is a remarkable gift. Just one thought can change the momentum of the activity that brings about our demonstrations in life. Now, I found a particular quote. I just am so compelled to use it tonight. And it comes from Dr. Ernest Holmes, who's the founder of religious science, and Dr. Raymond Charles Barker, his top minister in New York City. And together they wrote a remarkable book called 365 Days for Richer Living. And if you don't have that book, I highly recommend that it become a daily reading for each of you out there. And they set together on, interestingly enough, October 11th, because it's a daily reading, they said, our world offers us the opportunity to cooperate with it on a spiritual basis. Our world offers us this opportunity to cooperate on a spiritual basis. Or we can choose to instead argue with it on a material basis. Now, if we cooperate on a spiritual basis, we have an abundant life with greater peace, security, and safety than we could ever imagine. But if we resist, and we all have done that, if we resist and argue with our circumstances, we find our troubles heaped upon themselves in even greater measure. So given the choice, I like the first option, to cooperate with Spirit and to use this remarkable power and freedom to think for ourselves, not for each other, but to think for ourselves, and to collaborate or cooperate with that soul that we've been individually portioned out, individually poured into the mold called Pamela, individually poured into the mold called Joe Seiler. And we each get to use the power of our own thinking, and through that power, be able to demonstrate wonderful results. And the power of prayer, or the use of prayer, taking the initiative to invite God, which really is what prayer is. You're inviting God to be right with you in that moment. And the thing we really would like to do is invite God's greater ideas into our lives. Now, I was not brought up to think of prayer for that reason. I wasn't really taught to all seek material goods, but you can see through the wisdom of Dr. Barker and Dr. Holmes that if we just work with life on the material plane, just focusing on things and our circumstances, it's a great place to invite trouble, to invite self-doubt, to invite worry, too much worry. But if we cooperate with Spirit and invite this presence of God to bring its better ideas into our lives, unique for our use, then prayer will have found a purpose. One of my favorite teachers, Dr. Lloyd George Tupper, a minister now in his 54th year of ministry, said once, and I always thought this was a remarkable thing to say. I wish I had heard it much earlier in my life. And he said, Pamela, the reason why most people's prayers are not answered is the answer is never in their prayer. Now think about that. If we're never asking God to bring a greater idea that we're here on this earth to fulfill as our potential, and that we take that idea and wrap our gifts and talents and energies and resources to fulfill that, who else can do that job for us? It's ours to do. So in inviting this presence of God into our life, we are cooperating with Spirit and asking for ideas to bring about a happier, fulfilling, richer, healthier, more robust self-expression of who we are. And then, and here's the beauty, spoiler alert, here's the beauty, is the soul within us will take that decision, that spiritual prototype, something we've envisioned for ourselves, for the world around us. And it will take that and start to realize it. And what I mean by realize is start to bring about all the people, places, events, and circumstances that are all essential and necessary for a result or a demonstration to be realized. Now, if you approach your prayer work that way, you realize that once you put the answer in the prayer, then the soul, which is here to help us demonstrate and realize, bring things into a realization, which means a demonstration. That means brought into our real and tangible experiences, is doing that work for us. We have to just cooperate. What do I mean by cooperate? Well, cooperation is using your individual intelligence. Because in the prayer work we're talking about, you're not isolated or alone. You're not talking to yourself. You're using your unique individuation of a greater intelligence. Joe says we can call it Spirit, we can call it God. Whatever that higher intelligence is of our personal understanding is who we're communicating with. And in that communication is a clear recognition that we are here to realize our heart's desires. So if you have a heart's desire, something passionately that you're committed to, whether you've ever spoken it or not in your lifetime, now is the time. Stop riding around with one foot on the brake and one foot on the gas. It's not a very comfortable way to live. And when you have the faith and the confidence, and maybe faith is another way of saying confidence, that you are being heard by this greater intelligence, this loving presence that is here to deliver on your good and never withhold it, you should have the confidence to proceed with each day, with each activity, knowing that this Spirit this cooperating spirit is going to lay before you opportunities to start experiencing and working towards this realization. And we're here to use our intelligence. And how do we use that intelligence? We respond. You see, the definition of intelligence is responsiveness. You're here to respond when you get those nudges, that intuitive aha, when those opportunities start to flow and you begin to see them begin to be realized. They're just the part and parcel of spirit bringing all of those wonderful components together for your realization of that idea, that prototype that you had that might have just felt like a dream or felt like a whim or felt like a passion, but something that may be unachievable, but that's what it takes and how God knows to know itself. God knows itself through you. It's the only way God really can know itself is how you bring your intelligence and trust in that cooperation to bring a divine realization. So you can choose the human journey fraught with circumstance, or you could choose the divine experience, which is here to deliver a loving, cooperative way to evolve spiritually, to evolve as a person, to evolve as a spouse, a co-worker, a son or a daughter, to evolve in all the ways that we're here to fully express life. And that's what prayer is all about. It's expressing life so much more fully because we're cooperating with a higher intelligence. Now, with that, I would like to turn our program over to my colleague, Joe Seiler. I've touched upon the big picture. Now, she's going to help us understand, well, what does that mean in the life of Joe Seiler? How did prayer and these concepts and ideas change her life?
Thank you so much, Pamela. Thank you for that overview. It's so important. These principles that we teach here in CSL Palm Beaches are the same principles that Pamela was talking about. And those are the same principles that led me to the freedom of my own life. And this evening, I would love to share with you just one aspect of my life that changed completely. And it changed through affirmative prayer and affirmations, and it opened up a whole new path for me in my career. But it didn't happen overnight. It happened step by step. So to start with my background, as an adopted child, I was really grateful that I even had a home. But however, the upbringing was really very strict. My father was, simply put, abusive. Okay. He was quite sure, though, that their religion was the only one that mattered. And it was the right religion. And I learned so much about sin. And I learned that very early in life. I was taught that life was burdensome. I was burdened. I was a terrible, terrible sinner. And other people were so much smarter than me and more important. And so I developed that profound and deep-seated sense of inferiority that you would expect that I would have developed. And of course, I put on those boxing gloves that Dr. Pamela was talking about. And I was so desperate to find the freedom from the terrible fears that I had. They haunted me. And so by the time I began studying the science of mind, my life had become very, very unbearable. And I was in my mid-20s and living in Cleveland, Ohio. And I was so afraid of people. I was afraid of my own ability to survive in this unfriendly world. I was afraid of the people that I was afraid of. And I was afraid that they would judge me for being afraid of them. I was just so fearful. Well, others that I have known were on their path to being successful, having successful lives, but I felt trapped and helpless. I seldom smiled because I worried most of the time. And people would come up to me and sometimes tell me, "You look like you have the weight of the world on your shoulder." And most areas of my life, they did suffer a good deal. My health was suffering. For a number of years, I burned the candle at both ends. I smoked a lot. I went out drinking almost every weekend with my companions, drinking buddies. I didn't have real relationships because my companions and I never had time to sit down and have a serious talk. My finances were horrible, very tight. I was living paycheck to paycheck. And I was always so afraid that my landlord would raise my rent, and then I could not afford even the small apartment in an inexpensive but crime-ridden neighborhood in Cleveland. I couldn't afford it anymore. I was so afraid of that. My old secondhand Volkswagen Carmen Gear, I love that car, but it had a broken heater in Cleveland in the wintertime, okay? And you could see the road through the floorboards under the driver's seat. And, that was how things were. I did have a good job, though. I had a good job as a secretary in a prominent research hospital there in Cleveland. But notice it was a job. It was not a career. And now when I look back, of course, I can appreciate the skills that I had as a secretary. I'm really glad that I had that. But it was a default job because there was no way I could obtain a college education with my finances. And of course, the way that I felt about myself, I had no confidence that I'd even be able to make it through college, even if I could afford it. So I felt that I was only a mouthpiece for my boss, and I could not express myself the way I would like to, and I felt trapped. So what drew me to metaphysics? Well, I grew up on Long Island. And before moving to Ohio, I had a music teacher who was very familiar with metaphysical principles. She incorporated so many of these principles into our lessons. And little did I know that back then how important they were to my entire life. That really changed my life. Because after I moved to Cleveland, I began to search for more meaning. And I discovered the Church of Religious Science in Shaker Heights, Ohio. That was a life changer. And the minute I set my foot into the sanctuary there, I was hooked. My life changed. I bought the textbook, read it from cover to cover. I absorbed the first year classes like a sponge. And that's what I learned about the affirmative prayers and how to pray affirmative scientific prayer, or what we say, treatment. I learned how to take the sordid beliefs that I had grown up with and change them into life-affirming, nourishing system that worked. I learned about the simple 5 steps of affirmative prayer. It consists of 1, recognition of a power of good, a power for good, recognizing that that exists. That's the first step. The second step being unification with that power. It doesn't mean anything if the power's up there and you're down here. You're unified with that power. That's what makes it so powerful to your life, my life. 3, realization that the desired outcome is already somewhere in spirit there. Exactly what you need, what you want is there. You don't have to go outside anywhere for it. It's there. That was 3. Thanksgiving is 4. You be thankful for it, because when you're thankful, you know you already have it. You can't be thankful for something you don't have. You have to know that you have it. And then the 5th step is sometimes very hard. Release. What does that mean? Let the universe decide how to materialize it. That condition that you desire, let the universe take care of it. So I learned that anybody who used those principles in prayer was actually a practitioner. Okay, so, that's it. And furthermore, I knew if I wanted to change my career, I had to change my mental equivalent. Because, Emmett Fox, who was a great spiritual teacher, he once said, your main job in life is to create the mental equivalent within yourself of what you want to realize and enjoy in your outer world.
Mm-hmm.
So I began to focus on creating that mental equivalent within myself for a successful career. And I wanted to have one that had control over my time and schedule as much as I possibly could. I wanted to be able to work no matter where I lived. And I wanted a career that allowed creative personal expression. I did not outline exactly what I wanted, but I remained open to whatever felt right. And so began a series of serendipitous circumstances. Now, through the application of these daily affirmations and treatments, I began to believe in my own self-worth. And I found the courage to take control of my life and my time. I did the next step from where I was. It wasn't a big leap. It was the next step. I just gave appropriate notice, and I just took a leap of faith and began working in a temporary secretarial service. Kelly girl. That way I used the same skills I already had, didn't have to go out and get new skills, and I could become more flexible and open to other possibilities at a moment's notice. And that was huge, because one day, after an assignment in downtown Cleveland, I stopped for something to eat in a cafeteria and met my second husband. I had already been there and done it with the first husband, but now I had a second husband. So we started on an adventure together that led us to become snowbirds between Cleveland and Miami. And a better job for me, because he had a couple of businesses. And we wound up with a lease on a small hotel in downtown Miami. My job was to count the money. I kind of like that job, counting the money. I liked it better than being a secretary, but I still wanted to have a nourishing career of my own. And so I continued to hold that vision. Well, my father passed away. Okay. Now, this is the one that was abusive, of course. Now, in his will, he provided that the sale of the family home would be evenly distributed between his two natural daughters. Nothing for me, which I felt that was going to be the way anyway. It was nothing that I hadn't expected. However, divine intervention, his daughter, who was the executor of the will, surprised me one day. I got a check for a third of the proceeds of that sale. She felt I was entitled to the same amount as she and her sister. And every time I think of that, I just get goosebumps. I feel so grateful. It comes over me so emotionally. I actually had inherited enough money to pay my own way at Miami-Dade Community College, where I majored in business with an emphasis on hotel management. And also I took a number of music courses, and I was in the flute ensemble. And I stayed in that for about 10 years, even though I wasn't at school anymore. It was a community thing. I had some wonderful time. And well, of course, the marriage and the job of counting money didn't last very long, but I did work over 20 years in the hotel business and as a director of sales in several hotels. And finally, I had my desired career. So I had control over my own time. I was able to work anywhere in the country. It was a joy almost every day to come to work and to put together the marketing packages and work with the movers and shakers of the community, and to help people in their meetings and, just their general group hotel meeting needs. And then you have to ask, were those affirmative prayers answered? Why, yes, you bet. So as time went by, I retired. So for me, retirement, it was both what they call a blessing and a curse. I loved having time on my hands until I did not love having time on my hands. So now I'm in real estate sales, which I continue to bring my creative ideas and where I can get to help people make major changes in their lives. I cannot imagine how my life would be if I had remained in a job where I did not feel right at. I had no creative input of my own, and my paycheck would have depended upon the whims of a boss who, if I was lucky, was someone who respected me. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a secretary, but that was not my field. That was not who I was. So having that mental equivalent of that fearful person that I was, locked into a life that was assigned by my parents who decided my career, I can't imagine that. I'm so grateful that these affirmative prayers and these treatments, they're personal, they work. It's practical for anyone who desires a greater experience of healing in his or her life. It comes from the inside out. We're able to do this because we're all equipped with that spiritual prototype that Dr. Pamela spoke about. But we have to nourish it. We have to nourish our spiritual prototype. So whenever I face a challenge in life that I'm too close to see the solution for, I call a practitioner. Because sometimes I'm just too close to it. It's a huge tool in this metaphysical journey, the practitioner. In my long life, there have been times when I could not see beyond my health challenges. And there's times when my personal relationships required greater understanding than I actually had. And times when I could not see around the corner on my own. And at those times, I found a practitioner. A practitioner will focus on the truth and not on outer circumstances. Those circumstances change, but spirit is constant. So my life did not change overnight, but it began to. I had a lot of guidance. Oh, yes. And I did a lot of searching before I could turn around and really feel that life is good. But every day, things got better and better. So 25 years ago, I must say, I met and married Renee, who's on this call right here, the absolute love of my life. Hello, Renee. He's in Europe right now. Virtually. I take good care of my physical body, and it serves me very well. I express myself freely through the written, spoken, and musical word. And financially, I have enough to share and enough to spare. And who needs more than that? I tell you, that's it. Life is really a matter of allowing spirit to flow. Now, 5 years ago, I got my religious science practitioner's license, and I can offer scientific affirmative prayers to anyone who feels the need to call. So I'm very grateful for this life and this freedom. I want to leave you with something. Music, it has always been a part of my life. Back in 1979, there was a popular song. It's still stuck in my head, and I still hear it a lot. It's called It Goes As It Goes. And what it is, it was featured in the movie Norma Ray that was starring Sally Field. And I'd like to quote the chorus for you. So it goes like it goes, and the river flows, and time rolls on and on. And maybe the good gets a little bit better, and maybe the bad gets gone. So thank you for listening to my story. And back to you, Dr. Pamela.
Well, Joe, I thoroughly enjoyed your journey. and how everything just kind of, what no longer served you just fell to the side. And all that awaited you were the riches that you were seeking. Not always in the material form, but in the form of relationships, fulfilling career, people, many of whom you served and brought about their goals and aspirations to enjoy their vacations, their weddings. I mean, I can only imagine how many ways you worked with people. And even today, helping them fulfill their home aspirations and goals. You know, I'm going to close here in just a moment with what we call a spiritual mind treatment, using those 5 basic steps. And I wanted to say that Dr. Holmes, our founder, there was a particular way he looked at the role of prayer in our life. And I want you to think as you're listening to us and taking all of this in, whatever it is that's pressing in your life, whatever it is that seems to be problematic, and could be a health issue, could be a financial issue, could be a relationship, could be a career, facing a crossroads in a career, whatever that may be. The one point that Dr. Holmes, in his brilliance to help bring something that seems so complex down to its simplest form, he said that we must rise above the belief, the ideas, and the form which produced the dis-ease in our life. Now, I hyphenated disease. We can think of disease as in a health issue, but I'm talking about dis-ease, when something is not stable or balanced in our life. There's a lack of ease in any one of these areas. And that's what prayer does. And that's why I would turn to Joe if I could not do prayer for myself, because I was too close to the urgency of an issue. I would turn to Joe and ask her to do affirmative prayer on my behalf. And that's one of the beauties about being a practitioner. We're here to do a formal affirmative prayer for those people who request those. So we encourage you to allow the practitioners at the Center Palm Beaches, which includes Sandra Marcham, which is also on this prayer summit tonight, Reverend Judith, Reverend Bob, practitioners as well. We invite you to reach out to us. Go to our website, cslpalmbeaches.org. You can see the practitioners there, read a little bit about us, and there are contacts both with the ministry and with each of us that you can reach out to us. So if you're thinking of something, and I encourage you to across the distance, allow us to do a spiritual mind treatment for whatever dis-ease you may be feeling. And while I encourage each of you to rise above the belief, the ideas, and the form which might have produced this disease, allow us for this one evening to take that burden off your shoulders and to know the truth about you, to know the truth about your relationship with God, which is to reveal that which is more perfect and ideal for your circumstances. So I'm going to close my eyes, take this treatment in for each of you. I encourage you to allow yourself to relax and just hear the sound of my voice. Allow me to communicate and help you cooperate with Spirit. So I like to call God creative intelligence, because we live in a multiverse, not just a universe, but a multiverse of intelligence. So much out there that we get to participate in by being a portion of that intelligence. And while God is everywhere present, in all people, places, circumstances, and conditions, everywhere omnipresent, omni-aware of everything in your life, I speak my word for you, because I know God is individualized in me, which means God is individualized in you right this moment. And as I speak my word for everyone in this prayer summit, everyone who has joined us at any time, at any point, I recognize the perfection that lies beneath the surface of that dis-ease, knowing that the truth about you is there is a greater call to action, a greater force for good, and you are here to open your heart, open your mind, open your world up to a greater demonstration of that which is more perfect, whole, and complete within you. And we step back from our circumstance. We step back from the problem. We step back from any inferior thought that's holding us back, any undue worry or self-doubt, or any feeling of lack of self-worth. I know for you that there is that which is more perfect, whole, and complete at work right this moment in your life to bring about a fuller, more complete demonstration of love, goodness, and support, which we all need to bring a better idea of ourselves into realization. And I know the truth, and I know you know the truth, that realization is ours right this very moment. And feel it. I feel it for you, knowing this is the truth about you. And so as I turn this goodness, this better evolution of yourself over to the care of God, which I am doing right at this moment, I say yes. Yes, yes, life is a yes system. Life is yes, bringing about that which is better, more balanced, more beautiful into your next experience, into the day you wake up to tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. Because I'm turning this prayer for you over to a God that knows how to bring about a more perfect union with you and the Spirit within you, so you can realize more joy, more love, more abundance, more satisfaction, more creativity, more of a self-expression of your gifts and talents for your enjoyment and for those around you. So I release and turn this spiritual treatment over to the care of God, knowing that it is done. vital, teeming with life, and perfectly yours. So from this day forth, go out and greet your good, because it can never be withheld from you. And I accept this for me, I accept this for you, and everyone listening. And so it is.
So it is. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I guess it's time to close our summit. Are there any comments from anyone who's on the Zoom?
I have to say that the two of you have done a marvelous job of explaining, and with such honesty and humility,
And clarity.
the journey that you've taken. And I think it's an inspiration. I sat down today to be with you, thinking I had a lot of things that I also needed to do, and very quickly, none of those things needed doing. And I thank you for that. I appreciate that.
You're disappearing.
I can't stay that
Doing a
long.
disappearing act here.
Well, thank you for your gifts.
Thank
both.
you. I thoroughly appreciate both of you. Our practitioners are so talented and are able to bring about miracles in their own lives and in others, and are so underutilized that we again invite you to call them, reach out. They are so happy to bring about miracles, or be the vehicle to help bring about your miracles in your life. And we invite you to join us and come to our center and learn how to do this in your own life, because it becomes something that you do all the time. There is no better way to handle a problem. I was just speaking with a niece of mine whose husband had a very surprising challenge with a cyst on his pituitary. Who has a cyst on your pituitary? But, and he had to have surgery on it. And so I called her and told her that I was going to be doing affirmative prayer for him. And she had never heard of affirmative prayer. So I said simply, well, yes, it's just my saying and visualizing his healing and his getting well, which is what we want to see, right? And when I say it and declare it to God that that's done, and thank you, I feel good about it. Instead of worrying about what might be wrong, it makes me see him whole and healthy. And if you do it that way, you'll feel happy about it instead of worried about him. And she said, that sounds like a great idea. A lot of my family has no idea really what we do, although we do post it. So it's a wonderful tool to use when you're in panic over a loved one's health or any kind of a challenge, because we learn as human beings to prepare ourselves from harm by doing worst case scenarios. So we go to the worst possible outcome, so we can try to prevent that. And all it does is scare us and make us feel worse. So this technique, this talent, brings us to a place of peace and calm and expectancy of the good. And that helps God create it for you. So I love this prayer summit. I think it's a great idea. And I appreciate all of you practitioners. And Renee he's not a practitioner of our Centers for Spiritual Living. He is within the Unity movement. They don't call him that, but he is definitely right in amongst all of this work.
Well, like attracts like.
Yes. It makes for good marriages, doesn't it, Joe?
It sure does, yeah.
When I got married again with Bob, I wanted someone of the same faith, and we have more women than men in our churches, and I never found one I wanted to marry in the churches that I attended. And of all things, I ended up meeting Bob in a psychotherapy internship that someone was doing, where we were the guinea pigs, and he was in mental health, as I was in the time. But guess what? His background was with Unity churches, so he already was of the same belief. So although I wasn't looking for a husband at the time, I had given up on finding one that had the same spiritual belief.
And I got a double benefit. I got to fall in love with her, and I got to fall in love with religious science.
Yes, yes. Then he started taking classes
Yeah.
at our religious science center.
So we're going to end the recording and say thank you for being here. You are marvelous, and I don't think we could do this without you.